Dunking in pregame warm-up. This, of course, set Twitter on fire. Many fans voiced their frustration with Zion's absence from New Orleans' win-or-go-home game. ESPN NBA writer Tim Bontemps and future Hall of Famer Vince Carter with me today. It's funny working at ESPN, right? It's always like future Hall of Famer, of Famer, All-Pro, and this guy and me who I like basketball. All right, guys, I got to tell you, I understand the optics. You used to be able to say the way things look, right? But now you have to say optics. You can't say story anymore. You have to say narrative. You have to say optics. But I get the optics. People are like, come on, man. It's a do or die game, and you're able to dunk, but you can't play. But no, we can't play. There's a lot different, just being able to do this and being in basketball shape. I think, though, guys, when you combine this with his attitude from the other day, Monica McNutt was on, did not like it at all, right? Like, I think a lot of people felt that way. It's a little bit of flippant, his attitude. It was a little bit like, who cares? And it came across that way, whether or not he was feeling it. And then when you hear his he's physically there, but he has to trust himself now, you're like, oh, it needs to be perfect, Zion? Come on. Tim, what's your take on the situation?
Well, given we're sitting here with the guy who put on the greatest show we've ever seen in a dunk contest back, a little while ago, it's safe to say this was not exactly, Zion Williamson.
It's not Vince in his prime.
Well, it's also not Zion Williamson in his prime either, right? People are going, oh, man, he's dunking in warm-ups. Why is he not playing? Anybody who's seen Zion play in a game, this is not a guy
Vince doesn't even count these as dunks.
Yeah, they're basically layups. So, look, at the end of the day, here's the bottom line with Zion Williamson, right? Over his 4 years in the NBA, he's averaged 29 games a season. That is what he played this year. Until he starts getting on the court on a more consistent basis, we have to just assume he's not going to be out there. And as you see here on the screen, that's just a crazy amount of games missed over these first 4 games of the year. And you go back to the start of January, the Pelicans looked like a team that would have home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. We talked about them starting this weekend. Instead, Zion doesn't play since then. They're now home for the summer. And you go into next season, you have huge questions about the fit of Brandon Ingram and C.J. McCollum and Zion Williamson, how this team is going to go forward with these guys together, what their ultimate ceiling is. This year, we're supposed to answer that stuff. We have no answers at all.
Vince, what do you think?
To add to everything that Tim said, you have to protect each other, meaning you can avoid this type of talk because now we're talking about this and showing that video the rest of the summer. But you protect each other. Like if you're going to have him work out and he's going to dunk or whatever, do it in private. Do it before the cameras get there. Do it in the practice gym. That's all I'm saying. You got to protect it. And yes, those are dunks and, those are layups to him. And, people say if he could dunk, he could play, just like you both said. He still has to guard. He still has to run. And, he just has to watch his weight because that's still a lot of weight pounding on that body coming down on him and you wanting him to play. So I think there's a lot more that we're not hearing to this on why maybe he doesn't feel like he's ready to play and it's not that he's not healthy. Because when you say organization that, oh, he wasn't cleared, and when you hear Zion say that, oh, I'm good to go, but it's just mental, what does that actually mean? And now we're just nitpick and try to break that down all summer when they could have avoided some of this by just keeping this in-house.
And Vince, you were on KJM with Keyshawn Johnson and me, and we were talking about Zion. And I got to say, there are some guys who come into the league, and I put them in this category. They're unstoppable physical forces. So from day one, Shaquille O'Neal, you couldn't do anything with him. He wasn't in his prime yet, but he was better than almost everybody, right? So there's nothing you could do with him. Zion's one of those dudes. From the time he's a rookie, there's not a lot you can do with him. But as Key points out, if you can't stay healthy, you can't develop. So it's a hell of a starting place, but you'd like to see him take next steps. This just invaluable. This is DeMar DeRozan's daughter, DR. She became the story of the play-in game last night in Toronto. Because during every Raptors free throw, she did this.
This is amazing.
Come on, man. That's a pattern disruptor. Toronto shot 50% from the line, and that was the difference in the game, right?
Well, by the way, it's not just 50% from the line. It was 18 for 36. They missed 18 free throws. The Bulls went 18 for 22. The Raptors went 18 for 36, including Pascal Siakam missing 2 of his final 3 free throws with 12 seconds to go with a chance to tie the game, as we see right here. I mean, it really was truly the difference of the game. It was just an absolutely amazing thing to see.
Yeah, and the Bulls came back, and Zach LaVine mismatched he picked on Fred VanVleet in the rest of the past few seasons, including the final 3 months of this one. He's recovering from a right hamstring strain, and Tuesday, he talked about where he is with his latest injury. Check it out.
Physically, I'm fine. Now it's just a matter of like when I feel like Zion. You know, I know the atmosphere I'd be entering based off like the playoff experience. So now it's just a matter of when I feel like Zion. It's a little bit of a mental battle because you know when I re-aggravated it back in February. You know, it was tough. So when I go to make certain moves, there is that hesitation. Sometimes there's not, but sometimes there is. And I understand the magnitude of these games coming up, and I don't want to be out there hesitating or doing something that may affect my team in a bad way.
Guys, I've been saying that legitimately there are 3 teams in the East that could win the whole thing. And I thought 7 teams in the West. I can't count out Sacramento. Oh, their defense. Sacramento's a good young team, space and pace, and a lot of flawed teams. But Coach Jeff Van Gundy was on KJM with me on the radio this morning. And he said if Zion is there, these guys are live too. I think I agree. I think if Zion plays, you can't rule out this squad either. Monica, where are you on Zion? Well, on that and Zion's future.
So I read the audio before I saw the audio. And legitimately, watching that clip just made me itch and very uncomfortable. I hated everything about that. I hated his demeanor. When was I out? I felt flippant. If you want to play ball, right? If you warm up, it doesn't feel good, you go for 3 minutes, it doesn't feel good, then come out. But don't, that sound,
didn't seem serious enough to you, huh?
It's entirely too flippant. You have not been available consistently at any point in your career. Like, what are we doing? And this seems to be the moment. Now, to your point, earlier this season, this was a team that was climbing the Western Conference standings in the small spurts and sample size that we do have of Zion. And so to know that your teammates are going out there and doing the best they can, and you are still waiting to be right, like,
and he's also kind of right already, but psychologically maybe he's not ready. You know, the CJ McCollum move, it's like, well, what do they need him for? You need on a young team a veteran who can play, right? And that was, I think, a very good move. And it's been, you know, Charles Barkley's been talking about it recently, but he's a comp for Zion. He's one of the people he uses as comps. And he tells the story, he's been telling it recently, about, in the last year or so, about Moses Malone when he was a young player.
Yeah.
And he was complaining to Moses about his playing time. And Moses Malone said, well, the problem is you're fat and lazy.
Yep.
Right? Like, you know, you need a veteran to be able to get in a young guy's face about stuff like that. Wendy, what are your thoughts on Zion's NBA future?
Well, it's interesting you bring up CJ McCollum because CJ broke his foot twice by the time he was Zion's age. And there was a question about whether or not he was going to be able to, have a long career. And he's proven that you can get past injuries. Now, obviously, CJ and Zion are very different from a body type standpoint. But I'll just take you back to last year. Last year in this exact same week, Zion was ruled out by the team, and he was posting videos on Instagram throwing down ridiculous dunks, kind of sending a message that I am ready. And so now, a year later, the team has sort of says, Zion, go talk and explain why you're not playing. And this is a maddening situation if you're a Pelicans fan, but just 2 things I think that are important to recognize. Number one, the Pelicans without Zion are not a contender, and with Zion they are. And so that right there leads you to understand that the Pelicans are going to play this out to try to wait to see if he gets right. And I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. He's not even close to practicing yet. Secondly, the Pelicans were well aware of this situation when they signed him to this contract. I saw people react to his sound like, well, this is why you can't have guaranteed contracts and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, I know. Guess who doesn't have a guaranteed contract? Zion Williamson.